You're listening to This Golfing Life, a Sounder podcast. My name is Dan Davis, and each week I talk to a different guest about golf and what it means to them.
I don't think amateurs really enjoy playing the courses that we play tournaments on because they're too hard. There's another skill separate to winning tournaments, I think, to just hitting the ball good. What I miss the most is the enjoyment of practicing and getting ready to go and test my practice at a tournament. I never slacked off.
Today's guest is a man who has built one of the most beautiful swings in the game. The European Tour veteran, a two-time winner, and now one of the most respected coaches in golf.
I thought, there's no way I'm not playing with Tiger Woods tomorrow. This is going in. And that was kind of the job done for me. If you give me a 4-iron or a 30-foot putt, I'm probably betting I'm going to hit the middle of the 4-iron and I might miss it putt. I can't imagine wearing a hat all day, every day. Really helps the hair though, but certainly doesn't help the hairline front. I know that.
A two-time winner who went up against Tiger Woods and prevailed. He's also one of the best-dressed golfers in the game. So welcome to This Golfing Life, Mr. Robert Rock. So delighted Robert Rock has joined us on This Golfing Life. Robert, thanks very much for making the time.
No problem. You're welcome. Thanks for asking me.
Why was it golf for you and not other sports? What was it about the game that appealed to you when you first took it up as a 12-year-old kid?
I think it's a few things with golf, isn't it? I mean, it's obviously something you can do on your own, at your own pace. There's things to be learned on your own. You obviously can play with as many people as you want, but I like being able to not have to wait for other people to turn up like you do with football or other things. I'd just walk across to the field, across to my house and just start hitting balls, or I could study it on my own. That was the very first bit that sort of captured my attention, was this is something whether I'm good at it at the start or not, doesn't really matter. I get to go and do it on my own, and all I need is a club and a few balls, and the hours passed away.
Who got you into the game first?
Initially, it was I actually attempted it on my own, found for some reason we had a couple of old clubs lying around in the shed. I didn't know what they were. I think one of them in the end was a putter and one of them might be a 9-iron, but that didn't stop me trying to hit full shots with either of them. I had to try and work out what they were supposed to do. But then, I mean, these were really, really rusty looking clubs. They didn't have wooden shafts, but I think they had the wooden effect over the top of the steel shaft with a leather wrap grip and a really rusty head. So they were, I didn't know. I think one was either a 9 or a 6. I didn't have it long enough to know which one was which, and I'm pretty sure one was a putter. But anyway, there was a family that lived down the road that were a golfing family, and the two sons there, I would sort of practice on the field with them whenever they came over, but I started just trying to hit some balls on a football field, and then joined a club at the local power station, which was 9 holes in Rugeley, which I loved playing there. That was a great club. I enjoyed that. And then I joined my first 18-hole course in Stafford, and Ellison Smith was a couple of years older than me, but at the same school, and his dad played there, and he used to pick me up every Saturday morning. We'd waiting outside the house, giving the horn at 7 o'clock. I had time to go, and he picked me up sort of on his route, slightly off his route, to be fair to him. It was very nice. They picked me up every Saturday, and we went to play in the Saturday morning group game. I think it was 8 o'clock. We teed off, and we were all putting a pound in, and hopefully mine and Steve's plan was to win a bit of money so we could buy some lunch and stay there for the day.
Yeah, well, that sounds like the quintessential junior experience, isn't it? Being dropped at the golf club and being there all day and just getting in as many holes as it's possible to play before it gets dark. Those days as a junior player, when you're really finding the game and sort of discovering that elixir of hitting the ball properly and getting it out of the middle, were those some of your happiest times on a golf course, would you say? Probably.
That was probably the most simplest golf ever was for me, was just playing it for fun in those first couple of years. And then it became more of a challenge to trying to get good. And that's when the frustrations come in of golf, and you're trying to learn all the shots. You're trying to not make mistakes. You're trying to learn how to chip and putt properly and how to putt properly, which maybe I still haven't done. And then luckily, industry had a really good practice area, so I was on that all the time. we had a little folder of little snippets we cut out of golf magazines, and Nick Faldo and David Ledbetter were really the first bit of coaching you would get regularly in the magazines that you could look at. Think, yeah, well, I want to try that, and that was my weekends with Magic. Really loved it. I saved every. I had Golf Monthly, Today's Golfer, Golf World, and that from pretty much when I would say from when Nick Faldo won the Masters in '89 onwards to maybe '94. I think I had every copy of everything. That was lost out of money.
Yeah, well, that sounds like a very familiar tale. I mean, it was a golden period for European golf, particularly at that time. What impact did that have on your enthusiasm and passion for the game and desire to be better?
I think I tried to mimic pieces of all of them. Certainly Faldo, Seve, Woosnam. I was big fans of all three of those, and I can remember having long periods of playing and practicing where I would be attempting or feeling like I was swinging somewhat like either of them. They were just great people to watch play golf. Seve and Faldo especially, I loved how both of those carried themselves. Slightly differently, of course, but just fascinating to watch, and great pros that were just brilliant at what they did and captivated people's attention at the time, didn't they?
They were so charismatic, I think, and so successful at that time. And I think they are responsible for a huge generation of golfers sort of falling in love with the game.
Certainly, I possibly might not have loved golf as much if I hadn't watched those two play.
Yeah. Obviously Faldo rebuilt his swing with Ledbetter, and you mentioned David Ledbetter. Do you think what he did to his swing then would have stood up in today's game?
I think if he was playing now, he might have adopted a different approach. And not saying that his style of play wouldn't have been effective now, because I'm sure it would have been, because he was that good. But he may, at the time, precision was the way to play. The ball and the club required accuracy and really precise striking, which he was the best at. Now you could argue that it's a different game, and maybe a game that I don't quite like as much. But I think him being that good at golf would have, and David Ledbetter would maybe, well, I'm sure David Ledbetter does teach something slightly different now. To incorporate more power in the drivers that we use that are dead easy to hit, which they weren't before. They were hardest club to hit by a long, long way. If you were starting playing, we would avoid hitting the driver, and people went to a safe club, whether it be a 3-wood or a 7-iron. Like now anyone can hit. Anyone can hit a driver. But my son doesn't play very often at all, and I'm sure there's loads of people that play golf similar to my lad. The easiest club and the go-to club to hit is a driver. I think that would affect how somebody would approach if they felt they needed to rebuild their swing. I don't think it would because of maybe a lack of skill with a driver. It would be more towards maybe building more speed and then learning how to hit wedges separately, I guess. We don't see that so much anymore now as a player. I don't think you would get a player get onto the tour without being able to hit a driver and then figure out you've got to learn how to hit one. Or that can't happen, I imagine now. You'll have somebody that can hit it a long way and they've got to work out how to do the rest of it, and they might have to change their style of play and maybe have a different approach with wedges to short game. But almost everyone that gets to a decent standard now can already hit a driver.
Which era of the game would you have loved to have played in if you took out the money aspect of it? But in terms of the people you were playing against, the courses that you were playing on, and perhaps even the equipment that you were playing with, when would you like to have played?
I would like to have been just a little bit earlier onto the tour, so I got to play a few more rounds with the people that I watched. So when I made it onto the tour, people like Faldo and Seve and Woosnam were just finishing. So maybe 5-10 years earlier would have been brilliant. I also, I guess, got to experience the move to the Pro V1 ball and didn't play much in the Balata era or the professional era, which I would have liked to have done that. The best part of my game when I started on the tour was my driving, so I guess I made the most of it. The changes in equipment did help me. It did help me get on the tour because I I hit my driver really well for the space of a few months, and that got me on the European Tour. I'd have liked it to have stayed as it was for a while. So in the early 2000s, I'd have liked that to just freeze for a bit longer, and the club heads not get much bigger than what they did. I think the most transformative part was when we moved to the Callaway Big Bertha era. That was a very, very easy driver to hit compared to Simon Woods and maybe the TaylorMade burner driver, the first burner. That was still quite a hard club to hit, and you really had to be very, very good with that. And we went to Callaway Big Bertha. That's when the game got easier, I think. And every driver since then has been easier and easier and easier. So a little bit of a freeze around that period would have been nice, and I would like to have played for that in that era, maybe, amongst people that I admired and watched.
I think one of the sadnesses for me is that long irons, mid irons almost seem to have been taken out of the bag now.
Yeah.
And also so many great courses that professional golf went to have been rendered obsolete by the equipment and the power and the strength. I mean, you just look at the shape of modern players. They're different to the shape of the players in the 80s. But I don't think you could argue that those players in the 80s or the 70s or the 60s were any less skilled.
No, I would imagine they certainly would have been the best players of whatever era they played. You learn to play with the club that you've got, and they would all played with the best clubs they could possibly have at the time. Nobody was playing with worse clubs than what were available, but they were limited in head size. And I think if they'd played in a different era, it wouldn't take such a long time to practice drivers on the range, and you could spend more time in the gym, or you could spend more time building up speed, because striking it at the middle isn't as important.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'd just love to see players required to hit some of the shots that you saw players hit even in the early 80s. You know, I think of Tom Watson's 2-iron at Birkdale.
Just sitting in front of a set of clubs that I bought off eBay, which is a nice set of Slaz and Giuseppe blade. And this 3-iron looks ever so difficult to use. Right now, my days of using 3 irons and 2 irons have gone. I used to enjoy using them. I used to enjoy the feeling of actually striking one really, really well. But the courses that we ended up starting playing, if you played Wentworth in the old era, for example, and you're playing the 17th or the 18th, and you're trying to hit a long iron into those greens, it was all right. Right, and if you caught one that went a little bit too low or one a little bit thin, the sort of style of those holes were that you were running them into the greens, and there wasn't serious penalties short of the green. Most of the courses we play tournaments on now, that there's penalties right at the front of the green. Sometimes you're hitting over water, or you're hitting into really difficult targets, and therefore hitting long irons for short hitters, it's a really hard thing to do. So most people are going with hybrids and fairway woods because they're easy to strike, they're easy to get that front of the green carry number that you definitely need. So plus most players are hitting it that far that the 3 and 4 irons aren't in the game anymore for them. They might hit 1 or 2 around, if that. Certainly the longer players that I've played with in the last few years, they're hitting drivers 300 to 340, and they're just hitting a version of a wedge shot. The wedge is 150 yards, maybe 160 yards. So a 350-yard drive and a 160-yard wedge shot takes care of a pretty long hole, doesn't it?
You're listening to This Golfing Life, a Sounder podcast. Find out more about Sounder at soundergolf.com. Are you a historian of the game? Are you somebody who's interested in the people that came before you? Obviously, you know, as somebody who's studied the swing, I imagine Ben Hogan is a sort of pivotal figure in your life in some ways.
I used to be from when I was the younger golfer that was reading through all the magazines. Once I got through those magazines, sort of some parts of them hinted towards past generations, and then I bought all the different books that related to the players that were mentioned in the magazines. I studied Ben Hogan and earlier and Bobby Jones, and was fascinated by how good they were and what people said about them. That's the key thing, isn't it? From in the 90s, that people are still talking about how good Ben Hogan was he the best ball striker ever, and why was he the best ball striker? And he had his own secret, apparently, and that's a bit of a sort of fascinating thing to try and study, isn't it? So I did look at all the other players that I could possibly think of, and probably more so than I should have done as a 20-year-old trying to be a golf pro. It maybe doesn't help. All the other people I was playing with and against, they didn't do that. They were mostly interested in just playing better golf themselves, and rightly so. If you're a true competitor, that's what you do. I think I just had a little bit more. I was a bit more curious about how other people did it. Why were people talking about in such amazing terms of mastering the game? I'm wondering what could they have possibly done that was so good.
Do you think the game can be mastered, or is that actually the enduring magic of golf in the sense that it can't?
I think some people have got pretty close, to be fair. From what you read about Ben Hogan, it may have got exaggerated a little bit down the years, but it might not. Jack Nicklaus and Gary Player still quite often say he was the best ball striker that they'd ever seen. Tiger's golf in 2000 was pretty faultless. I guess there's a limit to maybe the scoring mastery. You can't have somebody go out and do 59 4 days in a row because it just doesn't work like that, does it? Ball striking wise, I think there's quite a few people that are really capable of hitting the ball well every single time they play. Some people are really good at wedge play and short game every single time they play, and some people putt well every time they play. And the very best are pretty good at everything nearly all the time. Have they completely mastered it? Maybe Tiger's golf at 2000 was the best we've seen, that we've probably got good records of. It'd nice to be able to compare stats to somebody like Ben Hogan or Jack Nicklaus properly, wouldn't it? And see how they did compare shot to shot wise, rather than just gauging it on wins. Winning is a different thing, I think, to actual mastering of how to hit the ball. If you're winning tournaments, you're a competitor, and you've got there's another skill separate to winning tournaments, I think, to just hitting the ball good.
We've all seen tons of scratch players and +1, +2, and members at golf clubs will go, "Are you turning pro?" And I don't think they realise the difference between that level and even the 100th ranked player on the European Tour.
Well, you've got different levels, of course. Yeah, you've got the scratch player at the club that everybody thinks is the best player and that should be able to turn pro. Then you've got the person that actually is capable of turning pro and being able to stomach playing it for a living. Then you've got somebody that's successful in playing pro golf and making that their career. And then you've got the people that are winning tournaments, that are out there purely just to win tournaments. And it's all different levels of golf, right? And they're all remarkably different. So I would class myself somewhere in the middle of that. And I'm not a super competitive player, never been really competitive, but I desperately want to win. I hate getting beat. The joy of golf at the start for me was just trying to play well myself. And then if somebody beat me, maybe I didn't like it, but it didn't irritate me that much that I went to practice the next day because I got beat. I went to practice the next day because I had things I wanted to work on and practice on for me to get better. But it was never because I got beat. That didn't wind me up, but I know that does wind other people up. And the super competitive people are like that. They hate losing, literally hate losing, which is weird because in a golf tournament of 156 players, there's a good chance you're going to lose.
How much of it for you was the process rather than the outcome?
Probably all of it. That's what I miss the most, is the enjoyment of practicing and getting ready to go and test my practice at a tournament. A tournament was where I managed to test what I've been practicing, my theories, and what I was working on. What did I get from that? Did I get any better? Did I fix the shots that I was poor at the week before? And that constant cycle of analysing my game and practicing and chipping away at things, that's the bit that I loved the most. That was the fun. The competitions are stressful. I was fully aware how good it was, how challenging it was, under no illusion ever how difficult it was. So I never slacked off. I knew that I was on a knife edge early on as to whether I got to keep doing that job or not. So my early years from 2003 up to 2007 and 8, I worked really, really hard. I sort of accidentally got into playing tour golf. It wasn't fully on my radar, but I'd got good enough that I played well in some events and got my card. But then there was a sharp reminder of how good everyone else was, and I wasn't quite up to that. But I saw really the life of a touring pro golfer was brilliant. I got to play everywhere I ever wanted to play. Got to travel the world. People were paying me to use clubs, to wear clothes. Right? I got to practice golf all day, and I was getting paid for it. To give that up by not working hard just seemed a million miles away from what I was doing. So I just tried to cling on to that as best I could, and there wasn't really a waking hour in that period where I didn't think about my golf and how I was going to get it better.
It took you 209 events to get your first win.
Yeah.
Played 468 tournaments in total, but 209 to get your first win in Italy. What do you remember of that and the feelings once you'd actually achieved that and broken into that next echelon, if you like, as a winner on tour?
I didn't want to be the player that played a long time and never won, because I wanted to experience what that felt like. Not that there was any shame in that, because I knew how good everyone was. And you've got to beat everyone on a week to win. Finishing second, although people would say otherwise, second pretty good against a lot of great players. So, but I wanted to win. But there was a sort of magical number of about 20 under par that I never seemed to get near. And I knew that was, if I wanted to win, I'd got to get to that number at some point, unless it happened to be on a really difficult course. But generally, the winners were getting close to 20 under. I wasn't hitting my shots good enough or holding enough putts to get to 20 under. So I may have had the lead a few times after 36 holes, but possibly slowed down on the weekends and never really threatened. It took 10 years. It could have took longer. I wasn't good enough when I started. If I'd have won in my first few years, I could have won in my first year because I was naive and I just hit the ball as hard as I could. If I'd have held a couple more putts in a few of my first events, I might have got closer, but it was unlikely. And then the realization of how you build a forehand score is another skill that you've got to learn to get to this winning total every week. So I was more than delighted to. Wasn't my first chance to win because I lost in a playoff to Shane Lowry in Ireland. That was my first chance where I actually really had a good chance to win the tournament, and I messed it up through wrong decisions, because that was actually probably the best golf, or some of the best golf I've ever played. That particular week I probably hit 3 shots that will still rank really, really highly as some of the best shots I've ever hit. So I was probably on my best ever form at that point. So I felt like I should have won that tournament, but then I'm up against Shane Lowry, who turned into Shane Lowry, right? Who's an Open champion, right? He was an
amateur at the time, wasn't he?
But he wasn't. I remember on the Saturday, I played with him Saturday and Sunday, and I remember getting to the first tee on Saturday thinking, I've been playing pro golf for a little while now. I started to feel good about my game. I thought, let's see what this amateur's all about. And he teed off on the Saturday, and I thought, he's good. We've got a decent game on here. Other amateurs that may have got to that far in a tournament, you see it lots of times, but you do see it where they slow down on the weekend. Yeah, the whole crowd behind him, it didn't bother him the slightest. It actually made it better for him, I'm sure. And he just carried on playing the way he was playing, so I had to keep up.
It was that was Baltray, wasn't it? And the weather was pretty heinous that week, wasn't it?
It was actually on TV yesterday. So I was actually watching it in here on the DP World sort of live continuous channel that they got for free. I was watching that. That tournament just happened to be on in the morning. So I reminded myself of a few of the shots, and I actually was looking at how I was putting that week, because I remember Richard Bland gave me a putting lesson that week, and the first 2 rounds were probably the best I can remember putting. But the weather was awful, and there was a lot of people there booing a lot of my shots and hearing his pretty hard, and that was tough to play under. I'm glad I was playing some of my best golf at that point, because otherwise that would have been a pretty brutal weekend.
You said you'd hit 3 shots that you still remember now. What was it about those specific shots that stick in your memory?
One was in a practice round, which is odd to say it was in a round, but I think I can remember the wind being pretty strong on the practice round, and I was in a really relaxed frame of mind that week because I'd just finished second in Italy the week before, and I'd just got my card secured for the first time mid-season rather than waiting till the last few events. I was playing a practice round, and just this one hole, I can't remember what hole it was, but I remember the shot. It sort of called for a really hard 3-wood into the wind, but one of my practice clubs really was just hitting drivers off the deck a lot. And I just decided to hit a drive off the deck, but hit it 3/4 pace, which I'd never done before. But this shot just seemed to call for it in my mind at the time. And I hit just the most lovely shot with a tiny little fade against the wind, and it just went nicely on the green. And it was just a really, really pure, lovely shot. And then my favourite shot of the week was on the 10th hole on the Saturday, I believe. Yeah, it was Saturday. And I was playing with Shane and Jamie Donaldson, and it was about 190 yards into a 20, 30 mile an hour wind. And again, it called for like a hard 3-wood, but hitting a 3-wood straight into wind is a really hard shot, because any sort of side spin in the ball would have gone 20 yards right or 20 yards left into areas around that green that I could have lost the ball. So I don't think this is the right shot. And then I was like, is it another drive? And I thought, no, it's not another drive. Another random thought came into my head. It's only 190 yards. My 2-iron goes 220. How far does a 2-iron chip along the floor go? It doesn't touch any of the wind. Like a 3/4, how far does a 2-iron roll along the floor? And I thought, and it was a clear run all the way to the green. I thought, that's the safest shot in the world days. So I hit a really soft 2-iron. It wouldn't have got more than head height all the way there. Flushed it, it went dead straight, and it just rolled all the way up to about 6 foot from the pin. It was just one of the nicest field shots I've ever hit in really tough conditions. But in my mind at that point, it was just the safest shot to hit. And unfortunately, Jamie Donaldson was with me at the time, and he knew what I was doing. And you're not right in the head, you want. What are you doing that for? And then I listened to the commentary afterwards, and Mark Robles thought I'd pinned a 7-iron. So that's a little bit of a downer. That was probably my best sort of creative shot I've ever hit. So it got described as a thin 7.
Bittersweet. I mean, it is amazing how, I mean, you've hit, so many good shots over your career and in your life, thousands and thousands and thousands of them. But it's amazing how certain shots can sustain you over a long period of time. What other shots? Yeah. What other shots from your career, when you go to sleep at night, give you that same warm, fuzzy feeling?
Mostly iron shots, to be fair. That's what I got best at. I had a couple of key putts, which were nothing really to talk about, other than they were really important putts to make putts when I was trying to keep my card, when I didn't actually know what I was doing. Like when putting wasn't very good, but I had to somehow make sure I hold these putts, otherwise the game was over. Those were out of desperation, and I was very, very relieved that I was winning, but I wouldn't call them good shots as such. I hit some really good iron shots when I played with Tiger, which was probably that I was most proud of, because that's when I really needed them. Don't get to play with Tiger without playing well, and you certainly don't get to come out on top without hitting good shots at the right time. And I remember two on the back nine, one out of the fairway bunker on the 14th, which I hit to about 15 feet, which was 7-iron out of a fairway bunker, which I knew as soon as I'd hit it, it was just the perfect strike. And I was just praying that it made carry over the front bunker and it would come out as I thought it would. And then 2 holes later, I hit a 5-iron. Definitely the best shot I've ever hit was a 5-iron. As soon as I started my downswing, I knew it was a good shot. And that was a lovely feeling. Yeah, so that was all the hours and hours and hours of practice and building this swing that I came to trust and actually came to really love, right? Which I don't mind saying in the end is that I chose the swing that I ended up with. It was sort of by design. It would be absolutely stupid for me to end up with a swing that I didn't like with all that time and effort. And I knew exactly what I was doing. And as soon as I started that swing, I thought, yeah, this is going to be a great shot. And that was just a magic feeling, especially when start the downswing and strike the ball and it just sounded and felt right. I knew it was going to land where it was supposed to land. I knew it was going to give me a birdie putt that would give me a chance of winning that tournament and beating somebody that I absolutely couldn't have held in a higher regard.
Well, we'll come on to the it would be remiss not to come on to the win over Tiger, the head-to-head in 2012. But I did want to quickly go back to the week after that breakthrough win in Italy, because the week after that was the US Open at Congressional.
Yeah.
And I understand that you arrived 12 hours before your tee time. What was the story behind that?
Yeah, I actually honestly forget the details of when I qualified for the tournament. I think I went to the qualifier, but I can't remember. I don't know whether it was I qualified because I won or I had qualified a couple of weeks earlier at Walkmead. I forget what the detail was, but I was waiting for a business visa. So I'd gone for a visa appointment, and I needed a second appointment for whatever reason. So I was in London pretty much straight after, and I was waiting to receive my passport back. And I knew it was sort of completed and it was going through, but they couldn't tell me when I was going to get it. I think I'd used an agency maybe to send it off or something. So we booked flights on the Tuesday and the Wednesday at various times with the tour's travel firm, and they held me on seats on a few flights just so that I could make it if the visa actually came in time. And it came. I think it came at about, it might have been Wednesday morning it arrived, and then I got on a flight Wednesday afternoon or evening. I think I landed at midnight on the Thursday morning at Newark Airport, and then I had I think it was a 3-hour taxi journey to Congressional. I went straight to the hotel, got to the hotel for, must have been 3 or 4 o'clock, and I forget what my tea time was. My tea time might have been 8 or 9 o'clock the next day, so I had a couple hours sleep. My caddy, luckily Gary had been there. He was more prepared and organised than me. He was there already. I actually think Richie Ramsey was first reserve as well. But he was doing his homework. I think they were both ready together. They didn't know whether I was going to turn up or not. I did all the work, basically, and I was still playing good. And luckily, Congressional wasn't set up as a typical US Open venue. I got to the first.
You kicked off with a 70, which is pretty good. After 2 hours sleep, whatever.
I thought, well, this isn't a US Open, right? It's soaking wet. The fairways look wide enough. Greens were nice, but not super firm. So I can play this. So we right. And I played really good.
Yeah. I mean, finished with a 68.
I ran out of steam on the Saturday. There was a spell on the front 9 where I think I stopped. I can't remember what position I was going into Saturday, but I think I was in the top 20. I didn't got myself somewhere into the top 10, I think, going into Sunday, but I just completely ran out of anything. Probably from the sort of the waiting and the travelling and the lack of sleep and the sort of stress of it, and from winning the week before.
I imagine there was just a lot of emotional energy expended in the week before. Did you played other US Open? You played another US Open, didn't you?
I played the Olympic, which I wasn't playing as good going into that, and then that was a little more of a US Open test as far as I was concerned. It was harder. Course was more difficult. I wasn't quite on form. That was a chore that I didn't get round that very well. And then I played Pinehurst, which was probably one of my best experiences at a tournament ever. Loved every minute of that. That's right up at the top of tournaments I've played. And I imagine it plays pretty similar day to day. You've got to strike it. You've got to think the right shot. You've got to plan it out properly. You've got to not play shots that are slightly beyond maybe your capabilities. You've just got to think everything through.
You're listening to This Golfing Life, a Sounder podcast. Sounder's golf gear is designed from scratch and tested on the course. Get 20% off your next basket at soundergolf.com using the code POD20. That's POD20. We've got to talk about Tiger in 2012. You talked about that win being the sum of your life's work or your whole life's work. And obviously, very few people have taken on Tiger in the last round and won. But I understand it was a quick conversation on the putting green the night before. You'd both shot 66 in the third round, and obviously you were paired together. But there was a little conversation between you and Tiger on the putting green that sort of put your mind at rest.
Yeah, it was surprising, but it was also, as a golf pro, you just want to meet Tiger Woods. Pretty much the questions at that time as a golf pro from the general public is, have you ever played with Tiger and have you played the Masters? Simple as that. And up to that point, my answer was no to both of them. I'll never forget on the Saturday, one of my favourite shots. Tiger had finished while I was still playing on Saturday, and he was on the top of the leaderboard, and I was just underneath. Could I get to play with him tomorrow? But what have I got to do over these next few holes to make sure I'm paired with Tiger, and to actually doubly make sure I'm paired with him, not fudged out in the group before him, right, and having Rory play with Tiger. But what have I got to do? I've got to be tied to the lead, because they've got to put it in the last group. So I need to make 2 birdies. And I had a 4-iron into the 17th, which I hit to 2 foot. So one of my best probably my best 4-iron shot ever. And then I had the par 5 to finish, playing it sort of cautiously, because I also didn't want to mess up, because I think there was still an outside chance I would play within that score. And I hit a wedge shot to about 8 foot on the last hole, and one of the rare occasions that I think probably because of the previous shot on the 17th, just everything just seemed to go super calm and clear, and I saw the line of the foot, which I never do, and I knew I was going to hole it. I thought, there's no way I'm not playing with Tiger Woods tomorrow. This is going in, and that was kind of the job done for me. Right, I'm now playing Tiger Woods. That is the best thing ever. An assistant pro that was watching him win the Masters from the pro shop or the clubhouse bar while he was doing his thing as he started until 1996. That was really when I was in the pro shop. To have got that far with my golf when I was in the pro shop, I wasn't enjoying my golf, because I was at the golf club all the time. Most assistant pros will know what I mean when I say that your love of golf it goes a little bit when you're doing the golf club tasks all day, every day. The last thing you want to do after you finish your shift is go and play golf. So that was if there was ever a low point in my golf, it was probably that. The night before was the achievement, getting to play with Tiger Woods. And then the next day was just, can I handle it? Can I just not make a complete arse of myself? On the putting green, it was, we just sort of crossed paths on hitting a few putts, and I said, hello, Tiger, and he said, he was intrigued by, through mutual blended Sean Foley, he was intrigued, I think, about who I worked with coach-wise, and knew that I'd chatted to Sean about technique quite a bit. So there was like a little bit of common ground that we had just a brief conversation with, but it was the first hello for me, really, just to meet him. Which, if that had happened on the first tee the next day, it would have been different, because I wouldn't have expected him to have that conversation, because it's Tiger Woods, and he should have, and he didn't, but he should have, right, just blankly and got on with business. But we'd already spoke, so I haven't got to speak to Tiger for the first time. We've already done it, so we can both just concentrate on the first tee shot. I didn't feel he didn't feel as uncomfortable as I might have done had he not done that.
Have you run into Tiger or bumped into Tiger since then? And if so, does he acknowledge the fact that you're one of the select band of brothers who have been down the stretch with him and prevailed?
I've met him a few times since. I don't know what he thinks. I'd love to know, really, but he's always very nice. Always says hello. I chatted to him at Pinehurst when he was with his son Charlie, and they were working on his putting together, so that was pretty nice. He introduced me to Charlie and said, look, this guy's swing's pretty good. I'll show you his swing on YouTube later. So that was a nice thing for him to say, which he didn't have to say. So yeah, he's always been, he always jokes a little bit about my hair and occasionally about my inability to hit broad shots while we played together. Obviously, he's renowned for hitting every single shape just a course of his practice, wasn't it? Hitting the pitches.
You mentioned the hair there. I mean, obviously, I think you're renowned as the European Tour pro with the best hair. How much of that is to do with not wearing a hat?
I'm no scientist, but I would imagine that it's got to contribute a little bit. I can't imagine wearing a hat all day, every day. Really helps the hair very much. Certainly doesn't help the hairline front. I know that. You see guys take their hat off and the hair's going further and further back. Well, it wasn't for any other reason for me. I just didn't like wearing hats that much. I didn't mind a visor. When it got really hot, I actually need to wear a visor now in the sun, but I don't handle it quite as well as I used to. I just didn't like being told by somebody that you've got to wear a hat today, all day. I got into golf and being self-employed to be my own boss and do what I want. Why? I don't know why these. I know it's still loads of money, but I don't know why these fellas actually accept people telling them what to wear and what to do every day. Club that for a game.
Well, fair enough. But also, what are golfers thinking when they take their hats off? There's a picture of Stuart Sink I've seen where his face is sort of beetroot coloured below the eyes, and then above the eyebrows he looks like a corpse. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't wear a hat all the time. You've got to take the hat off. Like, the golfer's head tan is just appalling. It's one of the worst things about golf.
That's what you're signing yourself up for as a golf pro, right? You're every moment you're at the golf course, you have to be wearing the hat if that's in your contract. So you don't have the option of doing 9 holes without it on. But you're paid by people to wear their stuff at PGA Tour events or golf events, wherever they are. You've got to do it. So if that's what you're signing up for, that's what you're going to end up looking like.
Yeah, I mean, it's an awful look.
But an odd choice for what in most cases is a fraction of what you're playing for.
Right. Interesting.
Right. Even to Rory's, I don't know, Rory gets paid by TaylorMade, I don't know whatever amount of millions it is, but he wins hundreds of millions. I don't know.
Seniors golf, is that something that's on the roadmap?
Seniors golf, yeah, it is. Next April I'll be 50. That's kind of, luckily I'm 50 at the start of the year. The seniors tour schedule begins, well, this year it's beginning in February in Spain, and then I think they go to Barbados I think that's April, not sure. I'm hoping that's April in the year that I start. I would like to be able to go to Barbados as my first event. I've never been there. Quite a nice place to go, isn't it? But at the same time, yeah, I will certainly play some Legends Tour golf. I think I'm exempt for at least the start of it. I'm not fully versed on what I need to do to stay on it. But I haven't played much in probably the last 3 or 4 years. Really haven't put loads of time into my golf, just various things. My son's a footballer. He's recently passed his driving test, so he's now doing all the driving that we were doing together over the last 4 years. So that was one of the biggest reasons why I stopped playing, was to just be able to take him, allow him to have a go at doing his thing. Like I got the opportunity to play golf. Golf is a lot easier I believe, a lot easier on the travel than football. Having experienced both, football is difficult. If you're at a club that's a little bit of a journey away, you're there 4 times a week, and then you're going to matches even further away. So it's a lot on parents and stuff. A lot of respect to the parents that do all that. I've only got one boy. Some families are doing that with 2 and 3 kids going everywhere. It's impressive. So that was the reason why I stopped. That's the reason why I haven't played much golf. But now he's 18. He's doing his own thing. He's chasing his dream, and I'll be watching him. But also, that will it's given me more time to start playing and practicing. My swing feels as good, actually, as it's ever done. I've understood more and thought more about it. What I realised in the time, didn't quite appreciate. I went on a pro-am to Dubai, and I got to just practice next to Victor Hovland for just an hour or so. And I thought, I haven't watched a really great player hit a ball in a long time. And being around that is something that you take for granted really on the tour. You've got experts at everything all around you, and you can just watch and learn, and just being amongst that environment. That's something I was aware of, but I didn't realise that I would miss quite so much seeing and hearing the ball. Because as mine deteriorated from not hitting so many balls, I've now got nothing to compare it to. But if you're hitting next to a great player like that, you're like, oh, speed up a bit. It's supposed to be done like that. So that was something nice. And I need to get myself practicing a bit more. But I still feel like I can hit the ball pretty much as good as I have done. I understand the swing more because I've had more time without panic of upcoming tournaments that influences your thinking, and it stops you being too adventurous. I mean, I was pretty adventurous with my game. I was quite brave in what things I was prepared to try, even at tournaments, even during tournaments, even over particular shots. I was prepared to give some of my ideas a go. But when you're at home with no tournaments pending, you can actually be a bit more. I could be a bit more adventurous and actually try some more stuff. Now Now, really, really get what I'm trying to do, I'm pretty sure I can do it given maybe half an hour to warm up and get up to some sort of swinging speed. I can do what I want to do with the club. I can hit the ball well. And I'm pretty sure I've had a huge breakthrough on putting.
Well, that is good news.
Yeah.
That is very good news.
That was because of the panic in between tournaments. So I was pondering this the other day. So why have I been able to think more clearly about it? And think more systematically about putting like I did with my game. I never had a clear understanding of what I wanted to do with putting. I just knew it wasn't very good, and the time frame in which I had to work with, which was really limited, even though it was obviously a player on the tour for 20 years, I had generally from the Sunday until Wednesday to come up with something better for my putting.
Yeah.
And it had to work, and it couldn't make it worse because I was reasonably functional on short putts, which was why I managed to play for such a long period of time. I wasn't a very good putter, but I did hole out putts all right. I had lots of 4-footers in my round, and I holed most of them, I would say. So if I were ever trying something new, if I got to the tournament on a Wednesday and I started missing those short putts because I was trying, couldn't do that for a week. So I was going to miss the cup. But you've got to make those putts, and if you don't make those putts, you're not going to make any money. So my thinking was always a bit limited. I was prepared to give something new a try, but if it didn't work and it didn't show me any signs almost immediately, or I didn't get comfortable with it straight away, I couldn't do it because I've got to hold the putts on the first hole. You generally get faced a 4-foot. When I was practicing really hard, most of the time when I spent most of my practice on putting, and I would have, let's say I had a week off and I practiced putting every single day for a week, I would generally 3-putt first hole. And it would drive me absolutely insane that I spent that much time. I would hit a driver down the middle that I hadn't practiced. I'd hit an iron onto the green that I hadn't practiced, and I'd 3-putt. That's the only thing I practiced for 7 days and got worse.
What I don't understand about putting, I'm sure that, and I know that it's part of the game that's plagued you over your career, or perhaps been the least strong part of your game.
Yeah.
Is that, I mean, you've got mastery of your swing, and now you've got a training aid that is everywhere, and everybody's talking about, the TRS slider, and it can groove a swing that is as beautiful as yours. And you are somebody who is renowned as having one of the great swings in the game. But if you can achieve all those positions and deliver the club head back to the ball and control its flight and produce the outcome, why is it not possible to swing a putter head back about 10 inches and hit the middle of the putter? I just don't understand that. I mean, I even as a very, very average golfer, I cannot understand why it's so difficult to find the middle of the putter.
It wasn't necessarily finding the middle of the putter, although I did miss-hit quite a lot of putts. Right, I would back my chances on if you give me a 4-iron or a 30-foot putt, I'm probably betting I'm going to hit the middle of the 4-iron and I might miss it putt. Weird, isn't it? But I never fully let myself get immersed in trying to understand one technique of putting and make that work. Whereas I committed to a style of swing that I managed to get a clear vision of how I wanted to do it, and I worked every day towards that. And I never managed to find that clarity with putting up until relatively recently, where I've kind of understand where I hadn't had the control over the putter face. And I play a lot of pro-ams. The amount of times I've been outputted in pro-ams by mid-handicappers has just baffled me. Where in a course of 18 holes, the guy off 18 or 20 or 12 or whatever would hold two medium to long putts. They might not play every hole. They might not hole out on many holes, but in the course of the day, they would hold a couple of putts. And I never did that. But how could it be possible that I can't accidentally hold a couple? But I never did. And I knew that it was, I mean, you can kind of aim to miss almost in putting. We don't have the beauty of in the full swing, you can hit it high, you can hit it low, you can come in from right to left or left to right. You can choose the way you want to sort of zone in on the hole. But in putting, the ground dictates which way we've got to go, and you have to follow. And if you can't, it'll miss. I think that's ultimately where I was in the end. I was pretty good at reading, and I would pick the line, but I couldn't hit the line, so it had to miss.
Do you think some of that is down to the fact that the full swing is more, perhaps there's an aesthetic quality to it, and especially as somebody who swings the club as well as you do, whereas putting, there are some players that stand with a putter, a putter stance with the putters in their hands who look like beautiful putters. I always thought Seve looked like a beautiful putter.
Yeah.
But is it because the full swing has been more aesthetically appealing to you, do you think?
Yeah, I found it very easy to picture swinging styles and rhythms and how people approached at their shots and how that would lead to a sort of particular style of swing and rhythm of swing. I could see all that happening and I could picture that for myself. So I found it quite easy to have that own image of myself doing a swing. But with putting, the rhythm of putting and the flow of putting never really stood out to me. Yeah. Every time I started putting, I was always like, this don't really feel right. I've got organised, so I know technically it's kind of good enough for me to hold these short putts, right? I'm set up parallel, my alignment's good, I'm not moving the putter far enough to really cause too much of an issue. And as long as I hit it out the middle from aiming upward, it's probably going to go in. But once the strokes start to get longer and I'm trying to match speed and line and curve, I lost the awareness. I basically lost the awareness of the club face with the putter, and never had the yips with putting, but it was longer range putts.
Yeah,
I always had 4 footers at the end of it, and I knew I was as good as most at that. But it's just, it's a shame I didn't manage to think clearly about it. I'd love to start my career again from today.
Well, that was going to be my last question, actually. If you could start over, what would you do differently?
I would have told myself that I was a very good driver of the ball and just keep doing that. I would have probably said, you're going to gain 20, 30 yards by just carrying on doing this. The technology is going to make driving easier, so don't worry about driving. Let's learn to hit wedge shots the way I hit wedge shots now. That would have probably been good enough. A really good driver of the ball. I was top 5 on the tour at the start. That would have probably stayed the same or got a little bit better. And my wedge play was awful at the start. I could have bypassed all the hard work with 5 irons and 6 irons, probably hit the driver a little bit further, worked on my short iron play, worked on my chipping more, although I wouldn't chip very often. And then I would be working at one thing with putting continuously from what I understand now. And I would have spent more time studying the competitive nature of the tournaments, learning learning the positional aspects, and that wasn't something that came naturally to me, and that's something that the really good players, the really great players and the winners, they know where to go, and they know how to make an easy 4 on a par 5. They know how to do that. They don't necessarily always try and hit. Well, I'm sure they probably do try and hit a really good approach shot, but they're always positional to make an easy 4. If your birdies on your par 5 are pretty much your scoring holes, and having more of a tactical awareness from the start would have been something I think that I should have focused on more.
It's very clear from this conversation, your life in golf, that you got a deep passion for the game, not only in terms of understanding it, but improving yourself and really delving into the swing and the mechanics and producing such a great swing. Taking that swing onto the course with Tiger and beating him in 2012 and everything else you've achieved.
Yeah.
Is there anything you think that are there any issues that golf needs to solve at the moment?
The pro game's in a bit of a mess, isn't it, at the moment? But they're still great players. They're just playing in different places. Maybe unrealistic to expected that they would all stay on the same path as we've always had them. There was bound to be something from along the way that might have rocked the boat a little bit. Sure, it had been dealt with a little bit easier and better. Maybe welcome a third party in that just provides a bit of variety. I'm out of that now, and I'm thankful that I'm out of that. I find that a little bit tedious and boring because it's just always talking about money, which is professional golfers always made decent money. I don't think anyone really cares whether somebody's making, or whatever somebody's making as a professional sports person. Everyone knows that people that are playing professional sport are making decent money, so they don't need to shout and dance about how much it is. Pretty gross, in my opinion. I'm happy to have done it for for any amount. If it was whether it was a normal salary or a great salary, right? It's a better job than a normal job, and I am fully aware of that. The fact that it seems to be all about cash is a bit sad. I think that has changed the nature of some tournaments. Some of our great tournaments are no longer great tournaments because they don't have the massive prize fund, or they don't have the money available to entice the best player to come play. Slightly torn on whether golf is better or worse at the moment, because the fact that average players find the driver a lot easier these days has to be a good thing, because I think that makes the enjoyment of the game better. But I don't think it makes pro golf better. So I wouldn't want to take a beginner golfer and put them back into a tiny little persimmon-headed driver, because that's really hard for anyone to enjoy. You've got to play for a number of years, or you've got to really work hard to be able to hit a driver. Whereas I could give him a driver now of almost any make in the last 5 years, and he can hit it 250 yards almost straight away. Around a normal course, he can go and play it. I think that's quite cool. But does that make for the best version of pro golf? I don't think it does. I don't think it's the separation between the skill comes down to putting and a bit of wedge play. And driving is almost like there isn't a bad driver of a golf ball on the tour anymore. The drivers from the last 5 years, with their interchangeable shafts, hosel location, and weights, just make it so easy to hit a certain shot type. Like when I'm coaching amateurs now, the easiest way for me to make a drastic improvement in how they hit the driver is not by what I'd say with their swing as such. It's how is their driver set up right for them, and can I tune their driver in to make a better flight for them? Because the work on their swing is going to take them a while, right? If there's something there that might need tweaking in the swing, it might take them two months of practice and quite a lot of lessons. But I might be able to do it in just changing the setup of the driver in 2 shots.
Yeah.
That makes their life a lot easier, and they get instant improvement.
Well,
instant improvement golf is very, very hard to come by, isn't it? So if we've got it in drivers, we've got to take it while we can, I think.
Well, exactly. There's no golfer in the world who doesn't enjoy it more when they play better.
Yeah.
What sticks out as the moment you've been most content or happiest or the best experience? I mean, take out maybe beating Tiger, because that's a sort of a one-off, but when have you been happiest?
As far as career satisfaction goes, I would have been disappointed with what I've managed to do if I hadn't had that one experience getting to play with Tiger. So my level of golf was, I loved hitting balls on the range. I always loved that part of being at a tournament, hitting some balls, being able to practice in nice weather, seeing a new course, another great course, seeing the same great course again. Doing all that for the years has been amazing. Having other pros ask me their opinion sometimes was a really nice feeling. Knowing that it was actually going to be my job for a relatively long time was a nice milestone to get to. Because when you first start, you never know when you're going to get a handful of events or 1 year or whatever. So being able to feel like I belonged as a tour pro and say that being a tournament golf pro was my way of life and my career was pretty cool. So I love that I managed to make that my job, because it wasn't easy and it wasn't something that came naturally to me. So being satisfied that I worked hard enough and getting to the end of my career, knowing that I actually could put an awful lot more time in, I got almost as much as I could have got out of it, even though I would love to have got better at putting, because putting would have meant loads more chances to win tournaments and maybe improve on my best finishes. But I think for most when you get to the end, you just appreciate the highlights and the bits that you never get to choose your highlights. Every pro does as long as they can possibly do in the job, and then you get a couple of things that stand out that you are most proud of, and they come maybe when you're not expecting them. And I think that's the fun of it, is that if it was all about planning to win a tournament, then you won that tournament, that's all a bit too predictable in my mind, and maybe that's not quite as fun. Practicing really hard and not knowing what it's going to materialize into, that was an awesome journey to just go along and just see where it all takes you. And then look back thinking, actually, that was pretty cool, that was fun, but it has to end. That's the that's the sad part. It sort of has to end at some point.
Well, thank you very much for sharing. It has been a pretty cool journey, and the journey continues. You know, you're a very much in demand swing coach, hugely respected figure in the game, I think, as much for how you've approached the game and how you've played the game and what the game means to you. So thanks very much for your time today, Robert. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for some interesting questions and chance to go back over some stuff. But I appreciate you wanting me on, and so it's nice to chat golf.
Thank you for listening to This Golfing Life, a Sounder podcast. You can find out more about Sounder at soundergolf.com. If you want to follow me and find out more about RNGC, Britain's premier backyard golf course, you can find me on Instagram at RNGC 2021. Thanks for listening.